I think it's a very irreverent song, and it does what it says on the tin to an extent. I think it's basically, it goes out of its way to offend various people, and I think it does it quite majestically, and I think that was kind of the whole point. And the lyric came from Lydon, and I think he felt things rather than thought them, if you know what I mean, in that sense. I don't think he went away with books about situationism and things like that and came back with what he thought were adroit lyrics along those lines. I think those sentiments were actually genuine to him in terms of stirring things up, in terms of, you know, negating what was going on.
The weird thing is now people think everybody's into punk, but there was only about 4 or 5 people at school who actually made that jump, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing, but we were so transfixed by the whole thing. We were desperately trying to work out we didn't even know what punk was, you know. We just heard this record that was absolutely amazing, and you just want to be somehow part of it. It made you want to be in a band, it made you want to do all those things that people always talk about, and that's a hell of a powerful thing for a record to do.
This bloody song that's getting faster and faster and losing all the groove and just sounding wrong. We must have played it 200 times over the space of a week. And John was hanging around, he's going, oh, you're fucking useless, like you can't play, you know, waiting to do his vocals. In the end, we went on strike. We said, well, that's it, we're not doing it. We've got to have another way of going about this. And we got Chris Thomas in, and we went up to Wessex Studios. And we played it 3 times, I think. And he said, it sounds great, you know, where's John? And John hadn't come down because he thought we was going to be there for another 200 times. And it just sounded right. And what we needed, and we made sure Malcolm wasn't there. And Chris Thomas, who was quite an accomplished producer at the time, I think it was Paul's idea to get him because he'd done all the Roxy Music stuff and stuff like that. He knew when it was right.
I think, you know, prior to the Grundy show, the numbers of people who would have known about punk were very small. It was kind of the people like Pete Shelley and Howard Devoto, the Buzzcocks, who'd read something about it and thought, oh, this is a bit like the Stooges, this is a bit like the stuff that we like, so this is worth investigating. And I think there's always kind of opinion leaders and people who were kind of ahead of the curve. And you'll get people like that, but in terms of the sort of rank and file punk fans that came after, I think, you know, very, very few people knew about the Pistols prior to Grundy.
That group have received £40,000 from a record company. Doesn't that seem to be slightly opposed to their anti-materialistic view of life?
More the merrier.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, tell me more about
We
it.
fucking spent it, haven't we?
I don't know, have you?
Yeah, it's all gone.
Really?
Down the boozer.
40, really? Good Lord. Now,
The phone call came. Oh, you got a TV show? What TV show? Oh, well, never mind about that. We're sending a limo to pick you up. Nah, we don't want that. We're not going to do that. Tell Malcolm we're not doing it. So we started getting on with rehearsal. And the phone rang again. It's this guy Nils who was our roadie. And no, Malcolm says you definitely got to do it. If you don't do it, there's going to be trouble. No, we're not going to do that. Well, the limo's nearly there, and we're not doing it. And the phone went a third time. Well, Malcolm says, if you don't do it, you're not going to get your wages this week. Oh, all right then. So we went down there and just walked in, had a couple of drinks in the green room. I didn't realise Steve disappeared for a bit. But it transpires he found all these bottles of Blue Nun. Went on, started doing the TV show, and Bill Grundy came on the set. And he looked really bad attitude, you know, and started goading us.
are you serious, or are you just trying to make me laugh?
Go on.
Really?
Yeah.
No, but I mean about what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
You are serious?
Mm.
Beethoven Mozart, Bach and Brahms have all died. Really? What are we saying, sir?
Wonderful people.
Are they?
Oh yes, they really turn us on.
What do they do?
Well, suppose they turn other people on.
That's just their touch, it.
It's what?
Nothing, a rude word. Next question.
And John swore by mistake, but Bill Grundy pushed him to repeat what he said. So John didn't want, you know, he's trying to make him look stupid. So John said shit quite clearly.
No. What was the rude word?
Shit.
Was it really? Good heavens.
Meanwhile, this blue nun's kicked in with Steve, and he starts effing and blinding his head off, and that was it.
Are you worried, or are you just enjoying yourself?
Enjoying myself.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's what I thought you were doing.
I always wanted to meet you.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We'll meet afterwards, shall we?
You dirty son. You dirty old man.
Well, keep going, Chief, keep going. Go on, you've got another 5 seconds. Say something
You
outrageous.
dirty bastard.
Go on, again.
You dirty fucker.
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it.
The attitude that they took on there was so startling. I mean, you know, sort of, it was so startling in that day and age when everything was much more polite. And, you know, the television as such was such kind of immature medium compared to what it is now in terms of the voices that you could get on it. And you get Steve Jones sat there, you know, sort of with kind of, you know, reclining into his seat and basically giving it loads. And, you know, I found that, you know, I mean, that was when they came to my attention, the band came to my attention.
I found out afterwards what transpired was because Queen was supposed to be there, and EMI got us a slot because Queen pulled out for whatever reason. And Bill Grundy didn't want to interview us, not because he didn't want to, because he hated us, he didn't know anything about us, and thought that if he said he wasn't going to do that to his producer Carl Wrighton. But there'd been some trouble going on, and the producer had turned around to Bill and said, "No, Bill, if you don't do this, you're out." So he took it out on us, but he took it out on the wrong bloke.
I thought I was a UK
In terms of the publicity that followed, in particular the Bill Grundy incident, the reaction was enormous.
But then he got really hairy. John got stabbed, got knifed, Paul got beaten up.
Punks were being attacked on the streets. Everything that they said had been interpreted as an attack on the institution of being British, an attack on the monarchy, everything we hold dear. And for a kind of post-war generation that was still very deferential to all those ideas of nationhood and national identity, they did become the enemy. I mean, my favourite headline of the many brilliant headlines that came about with the Sex Pistols was, you know, "They must be Russians." And I remember that one very clearly. You know, they must be communists. You know, where do they get these ideas from? And it was that kind of level of alarm and anxiety that they managed to cause.
We was playing at this place called the Nashville, and it was quite full. And halfway through the set, a scuffle broke out in the front row. I think Vivienne West was involved, was pissed, and somebody tried to nick her seat, and then somebody got clobbered, and then everybody else steamed in. But when you're in a band, the worst thing that can happen is a fight in front of you, because everybody watches the fight and doesn't watch the band. So we're trying to stop it. But somebody's taking a picture of us kind of pushing people away and trying to larrup the main bloke to get him out of the way, so they would continue watching us. But the front page of the Melodies Maker is Pistols fight, you know, pick fights with their fans.
I don't know why audiences hurt each other. I have no understanding of that whatsoever. I can't explain it to you. Why they would hit each other, or it's just beyond my comprehension. I thought you went to enjoy a gig. They seem to think that you had to get violent to enjoy it.